Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And Dr. Lopkin, I believe Biden is the gift to the Republicans that keeps on giving. Let me preface things by saying that I actually thought he would be able to rally. I honestly did. He did it in the first debate to some degree with Trump, even though Trump kind of shot himself in the foot anyway. But I thought he would at least come out neutral, but I was proven wrong. Won't be the first time. Your commentary.
Yeah, yesterday's press conference was amazing. When I watched
Beyond amazing.
when I watched his comments at the beginning, I actually did a double take to make sure I was watching the press conference and not past speeches.
I got
Because
to interject. I have to interject. Sorry, Dr. Lopkin. I can't believe you just said that. I just met someone, a friend of mine, for lunch today, and I asked him about the Biden press conference. He is a Democrat. He exactly said the same thing that you did. He was driving home. He has satellite radio, and he was listening to Fox. Just hear me out. And he thought it was like the best of his screw-ups. And then he turned on CNN and realized, oh my God, that's the actual press conference going live. And he's a Democrat, so I just had to interject. I'm sorry. I think that, I concur. It's like the best hits, and it wasn't the best hits.
I thought I was watching clips, and then as I'm looking at it, it's like, no, this is the press conference. He's simply repeating what he's already said. And now I'm going to give him some credit. At the beginning of the press conference, he came off as presidential. He almost looked like he knew what he was talking about. Unfortunately, that didn't last past a couple of questions. And the further we got into the press conference, the more he fell apart.
Yes, proving that he only has really the mental agility and stamina to keep it together for a short bit of time. I agree 100% with that. I'm sorry for me because I have a twisted sense of humor. He cracks me up. And when I see anytime he's getting a live performance, it's better than Saturday Night Live, which isn't really saying much anymore. But yeah, I thought, he's going to keep it together as I thought he would before the press conference started, and then it disintegrated into oblivion. The quintessential question is, we'll explore more about the press conference. He needed this to come out. I mean, he's at 33%, maybe 40. I think 33 is probably more accurate. How much damage do you think he needed this? First question is, Dr. Lopkin, he definitely needed a good performance, correct?
He needed a good performance. He didn't get it.
How much damage?
He actually did himself a lot of damage, specifically when he talked about Russia having a minor incursion into Ukraine. We might not respond. Okay.
Yeah, that's like having a minor stroke.
Right. First of all, he just gave Russia permission to invade the Ukraine. But Jen Psaki and Kamala Harris, within an hour of the press conference, were doing damage control. They've both been on a whole bunch of channels over the past day or so going, that's not what he meant. We're not going to tolerate any kind of incursion. And they had to rush doing damage control. When that happened,
real quick, yes, no doubt I saw that, but I say Jen Psaki, I might not agree with her politically. I believe she's very talented. Not so much for our vice president. She's one of the most, I thought Hillary was the quintessential unappealing person. I think we have a winner with Kamala because she was on a friendly network. It was CBS Good Morning or something, and she's like, "I am the vice." It's just she comes across like, "Whoa." Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, she didn't come off well. She never really does. Seriously, the administration needs to send her to Toastmasters so she learns public speaking. But the big problem was, well, twofold. The content of the press conference. The honeymoon period between the Biden administration and the media is clearly over, because the media went into overdrive last night fact checking what he was saying, and he was so far off the mark it wasn't even funny. He
Oh yeah, and I
really
think that's a great point because when he was running, the hardest question he got was, what flavor ice cream do you like? And we talked about this many times. Liberals, the liberal media, the liberal politicians, they're great at protecting their own to a certain level. Once you're no longer of use to them, which he is no longer you, and he was talking about he was going to campaign for in the congressional elections.
yes.
I don't think there's going to be a lot of takers for that one. Hello.
Yeah,
Ask
Terry McAuliffe how well that works out.
That's right. I think you are 100% correct. I think actually the press, because they are the useful idiots of the Democratic Party, the mainstream media at least, is they want him out because he's a cancer to the Democratic Party. I mean, when you look at, and we were going to talk about this a little later on in the show, but you look at when Biden took office, there was a 9-point advantage generically Democrat versus Republican. Now it's 7% positive for Republican in a year. Now, if it was 4 years, okay, shit happens. But in less than a year, your comments.
Yeah, the flip is phenomenal. And Biden seems to be completely ignorant of it. One reporter asked him about the Quinnipiac poll. Biden's reaction was, well, I don't believe in polls. Funny, he believed in them during the campaign. Now that he's on the receiving end of bad reviews, he doesn't believe in them. One reporter.
Yes, and by the way, the Quinnipiac poll is, in most polls, slant or lean a little bit more towards the liberal side or a Democratic side. They overpoll on that. So it's definitely in the 30% range. Do you agree?
It's definitely in the 30% range, but even more, if you actually dig into the Quinnipiac numbers, among Hispanics, he only has a 24% approval rating. Among independents, he only has a 28% approval rating. So it's actually the higher group of Democrats that's even pulling him up to 33%.
Have you ever, I mean, we've both been around the block. I've been a little around the block a couple times more than you have. I have never seen anything like this. I mean, Trump started out very unfavorable, okay? But this guy, Biden, he had like a 56%. I've never seen anything like this politically in my life, such a free fall from grace. And well-deserved.
The fall is historic. We haven't had a president poll this badly since Richard Nixon during Watergate.
And he was polling better, and that's really a fact during Watergate.
But getting back to the press conference, though, we actually had one reporter ask Biden about the fact that the majority of Americans think he's mentally unfit. And of course,
beauteous.
There was no good answer for that. But the one thing that stood out, and it got worse and worse as the press conference went on, is that he accepted no blame for his failures. Talking about Afghanistan, he still thinks that was a success.
And he has no apology. He makes no
apology.
Basically says, I have nothing to apologize for. How offensive. And we talked about this like a month ago. This old lunch pail Joe crap, Amtrak Joe, is a bunch of shit. He's not a nice guy at all. I make no apologies? The victims of the suicide bomber, the hundreds of people that are still left behind, you made no apology? God, have some humility.
completely out of touch with what's going on. And that was shown when he kept blaming Republicans for not working with him. Now, first of all, he actually admitted during the press conference that he didn't reach out to Republicans. He was trying to do everything with just the Democrats, but he still blamed Republicans time and time again, despite the fact that it was his own party that did not pass his agenda.
Oh, and I think it was hysterical. He's not. He says he's great on negotiation. I don't think he was great at anything. He wasn't great at law school. He wasn't great at anything, and he's not good at building bridges now. He says I didn't do a good enough job of reaching out or whatever, and then he goes into a diatribe saying, "What do the Republicans stand for?" He's insulting the very people that he's going to have to. How dumb. He needs these people, especially after the midterms when he get his ass handed to him.
And again, what do Republicans stand for? These are things he's actually said before. There was very little last night that was new. He was repeating himself over and over again. He has not learned any lessons going forward. And that's going
capable?
To be, yeah, I don't know if he's capable at this point, but that's going to be a big problem. I happened to see, I don't know who the group was, but Fox aired part of this during the press conference. They had focus groups, and they had a group of Republicans, a group of independents, and a group of Democrats. And on the screen, you could see how the different groups were rating what Biden said in real time. And of course, Democrats generally gave him fairly high marks, but not as high as you would expect. And of course, Republicans obviously gave him low marks. Again, that was to be expected. But watching the independents was fascinating because the more he talked, the more things he said, the lower the independents rated him because they knew he wasn't telling the truth. He's not been talking to independents. He's been kowtowing to the left. And one reporter actually asked him yesterday, why are you pulling the party to the left? And he said he's not Bernie Sanders. Clearly he has been following Bernie Sanders' lead, and everybody knows it.
He has no internal rudder anyway, to your point. He's following advisors. He's lost any degree to chart his own course. Yeah, of course he's following Bernie and the squad because he's scared shitless of him.
Yeah, and that's the big problem. And Schumer's having that same problem. Is there I don't remember who I heard say this, but it was very apropos. They're governing based on what they're seeing on Twitter. Well, for years we've discussed the echo chamber effect, and Twitter is a left-wing echo chamber at this point. So all they're seeing is that side of it. And they believe that it was the progressive wing of the party that got Biden elected. And that simply isn't true. Biden got elected by flipping independents, and then he very quickly abandoned them.
Without any question, he positioned himself as, especially after all the Trump fiascos, people had Trump fatigue. He was going to return us to. He was a placeholder, returning us to a degree of normalcy. Getting the decorum back, and not running as a socialist, which he's governing as. So yes, he abandoned the independents. I think it's very, 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 very telling, and I think the initial point that you mentioned that the press, they're sleeping in separate bedrooms. It's not completely a divorce, but it's a freight train about to happen. I think the next, and first of all, and also when you look at the coming situation with oil prices, Wall Street's betting on over $100 a barrel oil, that could really come into fruition, especially if there's a conflict with Russia. They withhold some oil, and then there's less oil on the market. Plus, numbnuts cutting the Keystone pipeline and energy independence. That's going to be on his ass too. I mean, gas could go to $5 a gallon.
Yeah, it's all going to come back to him, and now the media is not covering for him anymore. And I actually find it fascinating to see the different groups of media and how they're reacting because the networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, they're in the middle of a divorce with him. They've had it with him. They're like, they're still talking to him, and to Harris as well, but they're not holding back anymore. On the other hand, you've still got CNN and MSNBC. They're, they're the boyfriend and girlfriend. They're not giving up on the relationship yet.
CNN a little bit, and I'm sorry for our listeners. I'm sorry, Dr. Lappin. Van Jones just came back to me. He basically called the press conference, paraphrasing, a train wreck. He said It was incoherent, so on and so forth. So you even see, you see fractures. Even MSNBC is for nutcases. Okay, they're nuts. La la land. CNN, not great, but it's not what it was. It wasn't in stone. Their support. There's fissions, and you even had the guy King talking about how the political analysts for CNN saying how things are not going well. So is it great? No, but CNN's starting to
they're starting
question
to
the relationship.
see the light, and it is actually amazing. Again, watching these, when you watch the different reactions, and the ones I find absolutely hysterical have been the folks on NBC as they're interviewing Kamala Harris, because you see them rolling their eyes at her comments. They finally said, during the campaign, you and I discussed, well, how long is it going to be until they stop covering for them? I think we're at that point now. And it's completely self-inflicted, because I honestly believe the media would still be in Biden's corner, even as bad as he's doing, if he had answered their questions more often, if he had had more of these press conferences. But they got angry at him for not answering questions, so now all bets are off.
Well, I hope he does a lot more press conferences, because I really need to start using my popcorn machine more. Because nothing get some nice hot buttered popcorn, pop open a beer. It is must see TV. It is fantastic. And I guess last thing about it, if you have any final comments on the press conference, that's obviously go for it. But I also found it amazing that he even lied about something he only said a week ago, about if you're in the camp of George Wallace.
Yep. Yeah, he was trying to bet. He honestly believes that everything that's going on is just a communication problem, because the American public doesn't understand what he's doing. And
yes, they do. That's the problem.
They do understand. And the thing is,
and that's the problem.
This is not the first time he's done this, because he did the same thing as vice president with Obamacare. He kept saying, well, people just don't understand how good it is. People don't understand the benefits. We have to do more to tell them the benefits. Really? How long have we been stuck with Obamacare? People lost their doctors. If you remember, that was the big Obamacare lie. If you like your doctor, you can get
rates went up.
No, rates skyrocketed.
That's what I'm saying.
Nothing good came out of Obamacare. Now we're seeing the same thing with his energy policy, with foreign policy, and between his defense of the withdrawal from Afghanistan and the comments last night about minor incursions into Ukraine, you really understand what Robert Gates was talking about when he said that Joe Biden has been wrong on every foreign policy decision for the last 50 years.
Yes, let's face it, he was never a Mensa candidate. I don't care when he was 50. Now that he's approaching 80, it's a train wreck. And he's in talking about foreign, he's wrong on everything. He actually is touting the fact I don't know if he believes it or not, that Build Back Better, a $2 trillion or whatever fiasco, is going to help the inflation situation. I mean, did he ever take first year economics at a community college?
No, he keeps quoting. He said, 17 Nobel winning economists signed this letter saying it would help. And they did. I've read the letter. I've also looked at who the economists are. The lead economist in this group of 17 is Janet Yellen's husband.
Oh, boy.
The other economists are his cronies. So basically, this is Janet Yellen's husband and his buddies trying to come to the rescue of his wife's boss.
Yes, I can completely believe that. I also, in the end, for this press conference, we both definitely, the big takeaway, it could have cost him 5 points. And you're at 33, 5 points is an awful lot.
It's very possible. I am actually looking forward to seeing the next batch of polls that are taken post press conference because I want to see the results.
Well, actually, speaking of polls, Politico, certainly not a conservative leaning organization. They polled, I don't know the number, but they had a statistically significant poll. 37% of registered voters gave Mr. Biden an F for his first year. Half fell into the D to C minus category, and a overwhelming majority, like over 70% of Democrats do not want him to run. Pretty successful first year. I mean, you really have to work at that to get the kind of numbers he has.
No. The poll came out. Only 28% of Americans want him to run for a second term. Now, you can't get to that low a point without a significant number of Democrats saying, no, we don't want him running again.
Exactly. It's going to be interesting to see. I think sometimes you have to go through a little pain to come out the other side. If Trump gets out of the way, and that's for another discussion, Biden and his liberal whack job squad intifada agenda could be the best gift. Like Jimmy Carter was the gift that kept on giving for the Republicans, put them in a power position for over 20 or almost 20 years. This could actually rival that. What are your thoughts?
It's very possible. And you're seeing such a split in the Democratic Party that I honestly only see one of two ways that they can hold the White House in 2024. And those two candidates are literally Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema.
Yes, that Bernie Sanders wants to one of the people in the world besides Soros that I despise. There's very few people I despise more. In fact, I read an article about Bernie that he boycotted the Israeli lobby, the Israel-American lobby, because he said Israel was racist. A real nice guy, but yeah, he wants to primary those two. He's been a very destructive force for America and in particular the Democratic Party. Your thoughts?
I am actually amazed at the response of the Democratic Party to Bernie Sanders because they all seem to be missing one key element. Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat. He is an independent socialist. He only switches his party to Democrat when he wants to run for president. And then he switches back to independent socialist. So why is the party kowtowing to him? Yes, he caucuses with them, but he is not one of them. Meanwhile, Manchin and Sinema are lifelong. Well, I don't know about lifelong, but they are long-term
Manchin
Democrats.
is a lifelong. His father was, yeah.
Manchin is actually third generation
Yes.
Democrat. I don't know about Sinema, but I'm pretty sure she's been a lifelong Democrat. And these are the people who actually represent more of the party than the progressives do.
But that's my point about the damage Sanders has done. He opened the door for the squad. He opened the door for the Green New Deal. Very destructive for America and maybe the death nail, short term, not forever, for the Democratic Party until they have a renaissance, which they will have eventually.
The Democrats need to overhaul the party. And this is not something that's new. It happens to both parties periodically. Where, we saw it with the Republican Party, with the Tea Party, and they needed to come back to the center, and then Trump pulled them in different directions. Both parties need to start standing up to the extremists in their parties.
And I do think that Sinema and Manchin are very rare nowadays, used to be more common back in the day, are profiles in courage. Do you know the kind of shit both of them is taking me, the hatred, the personal attacks? I mean, I believe they were courageous, unlike our own senators, Murphy and Blumenthal.
They are absolutely courageous. And they are being rewarded for it. If you've seen local polls for them in their home states, Manchin has a 69% approval rating. Sinema, I think, is somewhere around 55 to 60, but both of them have very high approval ratings because they are doing what their constituents want, not what the party wants.
But how come the Democrats fail to see that? Your point is well-founded, Dr. Lopkin, but isn't that the way out for them? Sinema, Manchin, high approval ratings because they're standing up for what mainstream Democrats are, but all these others are going down the rat hole with the squad. And
it is the way out of it. But this is something, and again, it's endemic in both parties. Both congressmen and senators tend to forget that they are there to stand up for their constituents, not for Nancy Pelosi, not for the squad, not for opposing parties, and not for the president. They are there for the people that voted them into office. And so many of them on both sides of the aisle have forgotten about this. Manchin and Sinema are doing what they were elected to do. And unfortunately, in both parties, they are the minority.
100% agree. Just real quick, two last issues. All roads lead to Rome. This also leads to our esteemed President Biden. Again, it's gotten more mileage, a lot more talk about Hillary running again. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, if Hillary wants to lose a third time, that's her decision. I found it absolutely hysterical. CNN.com posted an editorial talking about how excited everybody was that Hillary was coming back. Nobody is excited about Hillary coming back, although I kind of hope she does throw her hat into the ring again, because I want her to have to answer questions about Jeffrey Epstein. I want her to have to answer questions about the Steele dossier. I want her to have to answer questions about Harvey Weinstein. She's
Will she
not
be
going.
asked those questions? Is the key.
Well, I mean, she can avoid the outlets that will ask them, but that's going to look really bad for her. She's not running with the same coronation idea that the Democrats had as last time. Now, most Democrats look at her as a two-time loser and they don't want her coming back. I love the fact that in her statements recently, all of a sudden she's going back to Bill's idea of being a centrist, where
Yes.
the last time she was kowtowing to the left, same as Bernie Sanders. And in fact, in one primary debate, said there was really no difference between her and Bernie Sanders.
Yes, I agree with your assertion. I think that third time's a charm. In this case, not so much. And again, she's not coronated to the presidency. I think she's going to be, and also she may not be liberal enough to get through the Democratic primary. But yeah, I think, and she would have to answer questions. I think she loves the limelight. She's not exactly the most stable person ever, and I don't think in the end she'll pull the trigger on that. But speaking about getting the questions from the press, the GOP is, I think they are, or at least throwing it up about quitting the debate commission because of its bias. What do you? I think it is biased. I think most of the hosts, one of the hosts or the moderators was the woman, I forgot her name, it escapes me, that was crying when Trump won. I mean, that's fair. I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, the commission has not chosen the best debate hosts. My gut tells me they're not going to walk away. I'm hoping that they're using the threat of leaving the commission as a way to leverage more unbiased hosting and better debate formats.
I think you're right.
If they do leave, the only people that lose are the American people, because these debates are crucial, and without the commission, the Democrats and the Republicans are never going to agree on anything. So it's the voters that will lose out if they do this. I again
100%.
I hope they're just using it as a bargaining tool.
Well, if they are, it's not a bad tactic. And finally, just a reflection of the crazy world we live in. Ripley's Believe It or Not, they now say that illegals can use their arrest warrants for to travel through or access through airport security.
Yeah, that is
Do you want
absolutely
another hit from some pot?
that's mind-boggling. I mean, my mind is having a lot of trouble wrapping itself around that concept. It's like, if you are found with an arrest warrant, the only proper procedure is for the police to arrest you. TSA, whatever and we've had this over and over again where local police have refused to help ICE get these warrants filled. But it is absolutely ridiculous that that would be considered a form of identification. And
But
at
isn't it
this
the end result of uber wokeism?
Well, yeah, it's the same thing that's going on in Washington D.C. right now, where they want you to have ID that proves you're vaccinated, but they're against you showing photo ID to vote. There's absolutely no common sense in getting rid of voter IDs or photo IDs. And I love Geraldo Rivera, who is,
I love that, what
again,
he said, yes.
lifelong Democrat, fairly liberal. He said, as a minority, he's offended by the fact that these liberals think minorities can't get photo ID, that it's a burden on them to get a driver's license or a non-state ID.
But that's the elitist mentality. I happened to see that. It was on the 5. I loved it. That there, and I forgot his name. He's kind of a heavy set African American guy. He's on a Fox Business a lot. He was saying the most racism he ever encountered.
Charles Payne.
Yes, great guy. And he was in New York.
I actually used to work with him.
That's right. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
but he says, in the South, they're like, hey, how you doing? Charles, you want to go out and get a beer or whatever? And in New York is like all this like fake empathy, but basically saying, you're really, I know you're not as good as me, but yeah, you've had it tough. So basically the perception or the belief that, that I need to help you because you're some way not as good as me. That's racism any way you want to slice it.
Absolutely. I mean, if you believe a minority cannot succeed without your help, that is racist. Plain and simple.
And I also believe, I agree with Geraldo, and that's an elitist mentality and that is racist, that blacks and Hispanics don't have the capacity to produce an ID or don't have one. I bet you 95% of minorities have some form of legitimate ID.
At least,
almost the same, probably the same amount as white people. What?
I mean, think about it. In most of the country, you can't buy cold medicine without a photo ID. A lot of them picking up prescriptions, you need a photo ID. You're telling me minorities never get sick? They never, alcohol.
Yeah, it's a convoluted logic, and it is racial biased, because if you went up to 100 African Americans or Hispanics, like I said, 99%, they'd have just the same percentage of white people that have identification.
Yes.
Dr. Lopkin, great edition of the Carnivore Radio today. And we did withhold it till Thursday because we had to see our esteemed president in action. And I think that was a very good decision because it did not disappoint, did it?
No, it did not disappoint.
Well, thank you, Dr. Locken. Thank our listeners, and we can be heard at many venues, can't we?
We can be heard at xvadio.com/podcast, as well as the Carnivore Radio website. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts. And if there's a topic you want us to cover, you can now get a hold of us at xvadio.com/connect. We want to hear from you.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin, and we'll be back next week.
We'll see you then.